finally got our hands on it. The sequel to the series that blew us away from page 1.
We picked up Illuminae at Book Expo, where it was getting tons of and no hype. It had this huge poster going up the stairs, and it was easy to get your hands on the ARC as there were piles of them everywhere.
And it was so easy to get your hands on the ARC that we were a little suspicious. And on top of that, the ARC was a hardcover, which never happens. So we took it home, kind of stared at it strangely, but it blew our minds anyway.
It was written from a place of love and batshit insanity, and that insanity continued into Gemina, where we got introduced to some new characters and new levels of crazy.
Now we have Obsidio and the end of the crazy ride. We'll tell you from the start, it's not quite what we expected.
It is way darker than you're expecting. The last 2 books had moments where you're like, holy shit, that's dark, but they were quickly followed up by some levity or some flat-out crazy situations that let you distance yourself from the reality of what the characters were going through.
Obsidio doesn't have a lot of the balls-to-the-wall insanity as a distraction, or too many moments where the characters can display their goofiness.
After the events of Gemina, the crew of the Hypatia and their survivors of Heimdall realize that they are low on resources, and their only hope of surviving is if they turn back around and try to defeat Baytek's forces occupying Corenza 4.
But it's a daunting task. Sure, the Auditor's ship is a fortress with upgraded weapons, but it wasn't meant to house thousands of people or go up against a dreadnought-class ship that Baytek has hovering over Corenza Atmo.
The entirety of the Mao is basically on a do-or-die suicide mission. Sacrifices have to be made. Thousands have already died.
The story switches between following Katie, Ezra, Hannah, Nick, and Ella on the Mao to 2 new characters. Asha, Katie's cousin, is caught up in the occupation of Corenza, and Reese, her ex-boyfriend, is a member of the occupying force.
Asha was lucky enough to be deemed as an essential personnel. She wasn't purged by Baytek like all the non-essential people were, and by purge we mean mass murdered. The only surviving Corenzans are more or less healthcare professionals, maintenance workers, the Hermium miners, and the miners' families that are being held hostage.
Baytek didn't intend to be stuck on Corenza, but the Alexander was able to damage their jump station before it left. To fix it, they need the Hermium that the miners can supply. Unless Baytek can fix the Magellan back to working order, they are stuck on Corenza.
Of course, it's an open secret that Baytek isn't going to leave anyone alive to talk about the attack once the Magellan is working. So the residents of Corenza have formed an underground resistance to do whatever they can to slow Baytek down and to keep themselves from being exterminated.
Asha runs into Reese and is rightly pissed to know that the guy she used to love is part of the force that has massacred the population of Corenza.
Reese is a technical specialist, and he was up on the Magellan for the majority of the occupation of Corenza. He had no idea that thousands of people were being exterminated or that Asha was on the planet.
After he fully understands the atrocity that Baytek has committed, he agrees to help Asha and their resistance.
Of all the main characters that Kristoff and Kaufman have introduced, these 2 are the most subdued and normal. When they were dating, they went wild, skipping school, drinking, hanging out with a rough crowd, and getting into lots of trouble. There is none of the larger-than-lifeness about these 2 in the same way that you have Nick, a member of a galactic mafia, or Katie, a tech genius in a tight spot.
Through Reese and Asha, you get to know people on both sides of the conflict. The soldiers on Reese's squad who look out for each other and, you know, are just trying to get through the war alive. There's Lieutenant Oshro and the Duke, who are the most memorable of all the people on Reese's side. Lieutenant Oshro because, you know, she is fighting her conscience the entire way through this war. And the Duke because he talks about himself in third person and sleeps in his armor.
People on Asha's side have been through a lot. You get to know them through what they've lost, what they're fighting for, and how they mentally deal with all the stress they're under.
And just like the first 2 stories, this story is told through drawings, video transcripts, text conversation, message boards, and word pictures. It lets you experience the story over just reading it. It's an extra dimension that I'm gonna miss once this series is over.
But we can't talk about the Illuminae series without talking about our favorite murderous AI, Aiden, up to his murderous ways once again.
He and Katie have gotten closer over the time between Illuminae and Obsidio. Katie cares for Aiden and thinks of it as a friend, while Aiden has fallen in love with Katie.
Don't get us wrong, Aiden is still very much an AI, but it's developed the capacity for empathy and a greater understanding of human emotions. It's been transferred through several ships and doesn't have access to near enough of the processing power that it once did.
Aiden is a copy of a copy, and its glitches are getting more apparent the more it tries to do. Its desires have not changed either, mainly protect the ship at all costs.
Aiden is still one of the most interesting characters in the novel. It struggles to do what it knows is right because the humans will see its actions as monstrous.
Aiden is a strict utilitarian. It will choose to sacrifice one person to save many people every time, or 1,000 people to save 1,001 people.
Take that trolley problem that gives Chidi so much trouble in The Good Place.
Chidi struggles with what he logically knows he should do, but his logic fails him when his emotions get into the mix. That's something that Aiden doesn't struggle with, and it's the fact that it doesn't struggle with these decisions that causes it so much anguish.
Aiden's choices are fascinating to watch play out because ultimately it's a horrible decision, but it's hard to argue that it didn't do the right thing.
And I think what scares us most about a person or an AI that can make a utilitarian choice is that you can't trust it not to kill you. You personally. In the end, you are the sum of your usefulness or you're a number. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, no emotional connection, no link is going to stop you from being sacrificed.
But that you can have these kinds of discussions about these books is just a mark of just how interesting they are under all of the great jokes and insane situations.
Of the 3 books in this series, I would have to say that Obsidio is my least favorite. Not that I disliked it by any stretch of the imagination, I just liked it less than the other ones.
The darker tone probably is going to be jarring to the people who love the first 2, but Obsidio takes a story that was set up in books 1 and 2 to its natural conclusion.
Ultimately, I'm happy with how the story ended. It was fairly satisfying. There are 1 or 2 cliches in there that I wish we could have avoided, but they don't detract from how great the series was.
There are some things that I would have liked to see have played a bigger role in the series, like how Ezra's mother is Leanne Frobisher, the woman responsible for covering up the Baytech attack.
We don't really get much payoff when it comes to that B-plot.
But overall, Obsidio closes the series nicely, and we're so glad that we finally got to read it. As for Kristoff and Amie Kaufman, this does not end their partnership. They plan to write a new series entitled The Andromeda Cycle, which has a huge sci-fi bent.
But from this series alone, they have won some lifelong fans. We're down to read whatever else they write, whether it's together or separately in the future.
Check out Obsidio if you haven't already.
And if you like our video, subscribe. It would really help us out. Bye guys.